Well, hello, lovely reader friends. Welcome back. I'm so happy to be here today with my January TBR and my very exciting 2020 new TBR format. So this might not be as exciting to you as it is to me, but this year I decided to have more of a prescribed format when I'm crafting my TBRs because I really want to complete some of the goals that I've set for myself here in 2021. I am planning on filming a 2021 reading resolutions video and you'll hear all about that, but one of my main goals is to read a bunch of series that I haven't finished yet. Another one of my big goals is to start really working my way through my physical TBR shelf, books that I purchased in 2020 that I didn't end up reading, books that I purchased in 2019 and back that I've never read, and so that's going to be reflected in this format. So I'm going to start us off here and I'm going to add a little graphic that shows you my new TBR format, and I'll start filling everything in as we go along. So the very first thing that I want to try to complete each month is a book for the Buzzwordathon, which is hosted by Kayla over at Books and Lala. She's fantastic, so funny, makes so much content and so much fascinating content. So I highly recommend checking her out. Of course, I would imagine that you already watch her, but if not, definitely check out the link below. I'll list her Buzzwordathon video. And so the Buzzwordathon word of the month for January is dreams. And so the book that I'm planning on reading for this is The Dream Thieves. Now, The Dream Thieves is the second book in the Raven cycle, and I have read the first book in this series twice. And I just haven't, I don't know, I really love Maggie Stiefvater's writing, but for some reason this series hasn't hooked me yet, but I really do want to finish it. And so in January I'm planning on kind of listening to the audiobook some of the time and reading the physical copy some of the time. I do have a physical copy, it's just way over there and I forgot to grab it up before the video. So the first book is called The Raven Boys, and it follows this group of 4 boys who attend this prestigious boarding school and this girl named Blue who kind of maybe has some connection to the psychic realm. Her family is a family of psychics, but Blue feels like she doesn't necessarily have the same powers or sight that the rest of her family members have. The book follows her entanglement with this group of boys and their search for this very special ley line. Don't really want to say much more than that, but I am excited to start listening and reading the second book. Next up on each monthly TBR, I want to include 2 books that I purchased in 2020 that I hadn't read yet. So the 2 books that I'm including this month are firstly Red Dock by Anne Carson and Saga Volume 9 by Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan. Red Dock is actually the sequel to Autobiography of Red, which is a novel in verse that Anne Carson wrote that follows Geryon, who is the red monster in the myth of Hercules or Heracles. Anne Carson is actually a Greek scholar, and so her take on this is very poignant and her writing style is out of this world beautiful, so interesting, so intricate, and I can't wait to start on the second book. I loved Autobiography of Red, and if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that, you can head over to my November wrap-up or even my 2020 favorite books of the year list. The other 2020 book that I purchased that I want to get to is Saga Volume 9. This is the final currently published installment of Saga, and this follows this little family traversing through space trying to save themselves. The father and the mother character are from 2 worlds that are at war, and so they're not supposed to be together, but they love each other so deeply, and they have this beautiful little daughter who is kind of a hybrid of each of their 2 species, and their governments do not want her to exist, so they're running from both of their respective governments and they're building their life together. They meet lots of fantastic characters, the characterization is on point, and I love the illustration style. Again, like I always say, there's a lot of graphic content in these, so if you're sensitive to nudity or violent graphic content, then steer clear, but otherwise such a great graphic novel series. The next book on my monthly TBR list is a book that I purchased in 2019 or before, and that for me this month is going to be The City of Brass. I started reading this and I got like this far into it, about halfway, and it was at a time in my life where I wasn't sleeping enough. So basically what happened is I didn't follow anything that was happening in this book and I was so confused because I was sleep deprived. So I put it down at that time and haven't picked it up since, but I've decided that now is the time to tackle it again. I've heard so many fantastic things about the Dabbabad trilogy. This is an Egyptian mythology tale. It follows our main character who becomes involved with the ancient jinn, and she gets whisked away to their ancient city and gets embroiled in all of the political messes that have been created over the centuries and centuries of these jinn's lifetime. And I remember it being really good, there was just a lot of terminology, and at the time my brain was not processing things very well. So I'm really looking forward to kind of looking at this with fresh eyes, and I will talk about it again in just a minute too. The next few books on each list are going to be books that are in a series, and there is going to be some overlap here, just like with The Dream Thieves, with City of Brass, because that is the first book in a series. But one of the books that I'm planning to read in January, or at least finish, is The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. I have already read about half of this book throughout December, but I haven't finished it yet. So I'm planning on finishing this. This is the third and final book in the Poppy War trilogy. It follows Rin, our main character, as she first goes to this elite military academy, and then about halfway through the first book, war breaks out. So throughout this whole series, we're following Rin as she's making decisions in this war that are impacting hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. We are seeing the harsh realities of war. We're seeing the messiness of war. We're seeing the very gray morality of war. We're seeing how our heroes are really making choices that we might otherwise assign to villainous characters, and it's very, very well done. So I highly recommend this series, especially if you do like war-based fantasy, but it is grim, dark, and very violent, very graphic, so be warned. So the other book that I'm going to count as my series read for the month is City of Brass, because that is a series that I want to get through this year. After that, I have 2 audiobooks on my list, and the first one that I want to listen to is We Are the Weather by Jonathan Safran Foer. This author is probably most well known for Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, but he also writes books about veganism and the environment, and that's what this book is about. It's about how what you eat impacts our climate. I personally believe that everybody's body is different, everybody's life is different, we all make our own choices, and so I'm not at all trying to place my opinion on anybody else. I personally am a vegetarian. I do most of the time eat vegan meals, but I am a very strict vegetarian, and so I think it will be interesting listening to this book from a perspective of someone who already has made this lifestyle change, but also kind of seeing it from the perspective of climate change, which is something I've considered but isn't the main reason why I eat this way. So I'm looking forward to hearing him read his own audiobook this month. And the other audiobook that I'm planning on reading is A Song of Wraiths and Ruins, which I heard so much about around June, July. A lot of people were reading this book. I believe that the 2 main characters are both trying to kill each other. The main female protagonist is a princess, and I think that her mother has just died, and in order to bring her mother back from the grave, she has to kill a king. And so she opens up these games to all of the eligible men in the kingdom, and whoever wins her hand in marriage, and her plan is to kill whoever wins so that she can bring her mother back from the grave. Whereas our main male protagonist has just entered this city and has somehow lost his sister, and in order to get her back, he has to participate in the games. I'm not exactly sure why, but I know that I love fantasy stories that revolve around any kind of game. I'm really excited to listen to this one this month. Next up, I just have a bunch of extra books that don't fit into any of these specific categories, but that I am really excited to read. One of them is The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. This follows a group of friends that kind of all meet at this cabin in the woods to go on a hunting trip, but one of them dies, and they're not sure who killed the person, but it's clear that it was murder. And so this group of friends is all starting to suspect each other, and they're all trying to stay alive until the end of the hunting trip. I don't normally read thrillers, but I think that this one sounds a little bit like And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. I don't think that people keep dying and dying and dying, but I think that it might have the same kind of vibe, like stuck in this house, everybody's suspecting everybody, what are the motives of each individual person? And I really am looking forward to reading it. I think the winter time will be a perfect cozy, like, it's dark outside, I'm feeling a little bit afraid, I cuddle under my covers, you know, that kind of vibe. I think this will be perfect for January. Another book I want to mention is one that I actually read over the last 2 days. I'm filming this on January 3rd, and I finished it yesterday, and that is Short Talks by Anne Carson. This is her first poetry collection. There are, I believe, 50 short essay poems about different topics. So short talk on the rain, short talk on Gertrude Stein at 9:30 p.m., short talk on disappointments in music. There are just lots of different subjects, and I found them very, very interesting. I'll talk about it more in my wrap-up, but I just wanted to let you know that this was originally on my TBR, and I've checked it off. Another book that I actually finished on the 1st of January was Seance Tea Party by Ramina Yee. This is a cute story about growing up and not wanting to grow up, and about ghost girls and about Halloween time, and the illustration style is adorable, and again, I'll talk about it more in my wrap-up. Okay, we're almost at the end, so there are 2 more books that I want to read in January. One is Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan McGuire. In 2020, I read through the entire Wayward Children series, and I've really been enjoying them. They are short novella portal fantasy stories, and I believe that this one takes place in a horse world where there are like centaurs and unicorns and things like that. I'm not a horse person, putting that out there, but I love Seanan McGuire's writing. I think she really is masterful in the way that she sets up her stories, and in her word choice she makes things feel imbued with whimsy and magic, and I really appreciate her for that. And the last book that I want to mention that's on my January TBR is Museum of Accidents by Rachel Zucker. This is another poetry collection that I learned about from the Green Brothers on their channel Ars Poetica, and I'm about halfway through it right now, maybe a little more. It is intense poetry. There are a lot of really upsetting themes, so I would look up trigger warnings if you are planning on reading this book, but it's kind of experimental poetry, so it is a little bit harder to understand, but it's also very emotionally evocative. So not for everyone, but definitely very interesting. I wouldn't say that I'm enjoying it thus far, but I would say that I'm glad that I've read it. Okay, everybody, thank you for sticking with me through my January TBR. I'm so excited to see what this new year brings in terms of reading and life, and I hope you are too. I'm just sending you so many good feelings and hopes for a beautiful year, and until my next video, I am sending you love.